Pride? 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 I guess it really did fuck off. Hey, Torque. Just want to hear how the party's going.
Listen, Fraser! You should be here! Why? Because Fraser!
Yeah, I know. I just, gotta take care of a few things and then I'll be right over.
That motherfucker's chewing through waves like a fat kid through a cookie store!
I don't really see how that's a... Hold on, someone's at the door.
Now I want cookies!
Yeah, hold your horses, hold your horses.
Get ready to grab a beer and kick some rear. Cause
Who still bangs on the door and fucking just runs away like a fucking retard?
And I'm ready to over my enemies. Feel the crowd, baby, just move back. Victory's mine, 'cause I got the fight, will, hustle, kill. Ladies, the wall, I'm showing you who's real. There's everything and real, 'cause I'm ready for the thrill. Hungry like a wolf, I'm going in for the kill.
I believe you can joke about everything. I may not think you necessarily should, but you can. One such thing is suicide, and the reason why I bring this up is so you are aware that I believe you can make fun of suicide, and so you understand that I fucking hate this comic on completely different premises. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to present to you pretentious political commentary, the webcomic. You might however remember it under a different name, Suicide for Hire. Suicide for Hire is made by Rafael Medina, had its debut October 2004, and is as of now still ongoing. I think. It's hard to tell when it only updates once every few months. In fact, it seemed like Rafael stopped updating sometime in November 2013. I do not particularly care that much for this comic. Now, I know there's bound to be those of you who immediately will dismiss everything I say simply because the comic deals with suicide, and you'll just think that I do not care for this comic simply because that it's the subject matter. Some of you may think that I just can't handle the raw reality that is this comic and its themes, or that I just don't get it. It's easy to make such an assumption because some people shy away from talking about the rough and real stuff, and as of such immediately shits on stuff that deals with such heavy subject matters. So if you think I'm one of those people that just can't handle the comic because of the subject matter and what it deals with, then I only really got one. Boy, do I not give a fuck. Like holy hell do I not care. What is the comic's theme that I keep mentioning then? Well, it more or less says in the title, but it's suicide. Meet Hunter Ravenwood and Arcturus Windrock. Yes, those are the real names. And you get one shot at guessing who the author's self-insert is. These two ever so edgy Cadillacs of men spend their day watching reruns of video game reviews while drinking beer and apparently browsing porn together. Ew. I could never do that. One look at the porn that I watch and my friends would be running towards the nearest church crying for redemption. Judgmental assholes. One day where two girls in class are talking, Arcturus has one of those moments you've had several times before where you have an argument in your head in which you're really chewing the other person on your asshole while they're just sitting there and taking it. Only Arcturus, being a totally cool dude, actually says this out loud, and in doing so directly tells the girl that he'll help her kill herself in front of the entire class. Bad writing, however, demands that there is a plot, and as of such the girl actually takes Arcturus up on the offer to have him help her commit suicide, and she'll even pay him for it. Now, normal people would obviously go, yo, okay, chill, I was just talking at the heat of the moment, I'm not gonna kill you. But Arcturus actually decides to go through with it and helps the girl commit suicide. And this is, strangely enough, not where my main issue with this comic lies. See, the idea for the premise is actually pretty good. Assisted suicide is a thing that many people talk about even to this day. People constantly debate whether it's ethical or not, and this comic even touches on whether or not these people deserve it or not. The subject matter is a goldmine to make a very serious, very thought-provoking comic. You could deal with themes such as mortality, justifying murder, heck, even cover the ethics of death penalties and whether or not assisted suicide is a good thing or not. But instead the comic insists on doing none of that and instead focus on making horribly unfunny jokes about semen. Have you guys ever seen that game called Hatred? That juvenile, dumb, childish, and retarded game in which you are a gun-toting, trenchcoat-clad psycho killer who walks around shooting people just cause the developers wanted to be edgy? Well, allow me to introduce you to the webcomic equivalent of that. The comic too tries to glorify a very specific group of people, being the gothy, punkish metalheads, while at the same time doing a horrible strawman depiction of jocks and bimbos. Now, I'm in no way taking the side of the jocks or whatever. I mean, I was a nerd in the 90s. I basically spent most of my college years being someone's punching bag. But this depiction of the jocks and the girls is nothing short of childish and kinda silly. The jocks are being dicks for the sake of being dicks, and I'm immediately floored by the metalheads who gives the jock a long preaching speech while at no point taking a hit themselves. Of course, there are never any lasting repercussions from the before-mentioned beating, and more times than none, everyone will side with the metalhead and ridicule the jock even further. So, yeah, there's not a single shred of doubt in my mind that the creator, Rafael Medina, is using this comic as an extension of his own thoughts and opinions. Now, I'm going to present a joke a few times. Each time I'll be doing something different to explain just why the vast majority of this comic's writing is piss poor. Do you want to hear a joke about a pizza? Never mind, it's too cheesy. The reason this joke is funny is because that you can apply excessive amounts of cheese on top of a pizza, and therefore it can be too cheesy, very much like a joke can. As of such, the joke I just said serves two functions and is therefore funny. Ha ha ha. So the reason why that joke fell to the ground harder than a botched body slam is because the joke has hardly been received before it is immediately being explained. Let me introduce you to the origin of the most eye twitches I've had in a long time. These fucking comments. I swear to fucking God, these are the very essence of a failure declaration of a creator. Imagine if I fucking needed a commentary track for my videos to explain why I said what I do. Seriously, fuck these things. And you can bet your ass that these things show up at least 3 times on every goddamn page. Sometimes even to explain why a joke was funny. You don't do that! If you have to explain why the joke was funny, guess what? It's a failed bad joke! Oh, that's right, the comic has jokes. And a comic that deals with suicide. And remember how I said that I'm actually okay with having jokes about suicide? Well, I stick with that. It's just a problem because this comic doesn't do that. Let me explain it like this. The world is a dark and miserable place. No one likes me. Nothing is worth living for. Tonight I'm gonna end it all. I'm gonna lock myself in the bathroom and down as many pills as I possibly can. Maybe then they'll know how they wronged me. And no one heard my cries for help. Do you want to hear a joke about pizza? Never mind, it's too cheesy. This is the essence of how the jokes of this comic is presented, and it's also how it deals with the heavy themes. It doesn't. It lets the vast majority of the story unfold, be it grim, serious, or even tragic, and then at the very last frame, usually out of nowhere, it will present a joke that is, obviously, super forced and really poor. When reading the comic, you can do little but shake your head at this, cause the jokes have no business being there. They're not funny enough to earn their keep, and it detracts from the original tone set by the rest of the comic. It's ham-fisted. And for those of you who are keeping track, this is not juxtaposition, cause with juxtaposition, you at least have a connection between the two things. Whereas here, the opposite comes out of fucking nowhere. Do you wanna hear a joke about pizza? Never mind, it's too cheesy. Do you want to hear a joke about pizza? Never mind, it's too cheesy. Do you want to hear a joke about pizza? Never mind, it's too cheesy. Do you want to hear a joke about pizza? Never mind, it's too cheesy. Do you want? A joke is not funny if it's used several times in a row, unless it's a reoccurring joke. But by then it's usually something simple, something you can easily put into several situations. Suicide for Hire apparently didn't get the fucking memo, as it uses the exact same joke several times over and over with the two characters, clients telling about why they wanna die, to then immediately cut to the two characters not paying attention. It's predictable, it's silly, and worst of all, it's unfunny. Why the fuck would you wanna force something you clearly don't know how to handle into a comic where it clearly doesn't belong? It just boggles my mind. Hey, do you want to help me make this chicken stew? Why sure, let me just make these sick wheelies in my fucking Bugatti, nerd! It doesn't belong! It just occurred to me that I haven't even touched the comic that much. I just jumped straight into talking about why it blows. Basically the gist of it is that Hunter, an actress, starts making a business out of helping people killing themselves, and at no point does the cops expect any foul play. This is despite Hunter and actors always meeting with their clients at the first time out in the open, are loudly discussing their plans and profession, are leaving motherfucking business cards, and my personal favorite, that the chick that actress loudly in the middle of class, in front of his entire class, announced he'd help kill herself, winds up dead. And do you wanna know the comic's justification of this? They contemplate that it might be God's will. Oh my god, fuck you. Just fuck you. Oh my god. Seriously, what chamber of your ass did you pull that one out from? Like, holy hell, that's bad. But we got a lot of bad stuff to cover, so I won't dwell on it. Let's instead talk about talking. Now, let me just show you a random page. Look at this. I'm picking a random page, dragging it to the window, and bam. Look at this. Look at all these goddamn speech bubbles. Holy crap! Not even goddamn House of Cards would need this much text if it was a comic. So no way in goddamn hell does a pretentious sack of poorly written garbage like this need so much. And you wanna know what the worst part is? Over half of this is preaching! I swear to God it's true. Over half of all this goddamn text is Medina here talking through a character to the reader about what's wrong with the world. It's him straight up sharing his political views in loud and ham-fisted ways. It's not, presented in a clever and thought-provoking way like how Deus Ex makes you ponder the cost and advancement of human medicine, while the game's major focus is somewhere completely different. No, this is just straight up Medina talking to you. How do I know? Well, he straight up states it right here. If I wanted to listen to someone who has done little to no research about a certain subject and is inviting people to an open debate and then immediately close off the debate so only that one person has a say in it, I'd go torture myself with watching Anita Sarkeesian videos. So all of this shit right here, this is just once every now and then where Medina decides he's got the whole world all figured out and he could make it a better place if we all listen to his small nuggets of wisdom, and I'll admit I can kind of forgive it. It's silly and doesn't really belong in the comic, but hey, opinions are like assholes. Everyone's got one and there's plenty of it on the internet. But then a few chapters inside the comic just either forgets or stops caring about its initial plot, and it all becomes this rampant diarrhea of the mouth, constant preaching about how the world could be better and what's wrong with people. I swear more than 30 strips in a row is just that. There's no longer the stories about suicides or what led the different individuals to the suicidal tendencies. No, suddenly it's just Hunter being a crazy asshole waving his opinion dick around in people's faces. It's like a workplace comic, but for real life. And somehow even more petty. Now, I won't be unfair. There are some scenes that are actually very good, which is where the comic actually cares to address the suicides and how Hunter and Arcturus react and feel about what they're doing. It gives it this feeling of realism that the comic then later shits all over. All of a sudden, Hunter is waving guns around left and right and no one bats an eye. No one gives the slightest of fucks. Like, what the fuck? Are you trying to be realistic or are you trying to be unrealistic? You can't both have your cake and eat it too when it comes to this stuff. I mean, how'd you like it if Super Mario suddenly pulled out a fucking machine gun? There's twisting logic and then there's just straight up unrealistic shit. Even Metal Gear tried to explain all the unrealistic shit that happened with nanomachines. They didn't just suddenly pull magic out of the... Oh wait, fuck, they did that. And fuck me, that was the best one. Speaking of magic... Bet you weren't expecting us to talk about that in this review. Let's talk about Arcturus and his friend Zero. Not spelled with a Z like you'd think, but instead an X.
Because poor literacy is cool.
This fuck nugget right here is supposed to be a figment of Arcturus' imagination because it's physically impossible to show inner demons without using the several personalities trope. I wasn't actually all that bothered with Arcturus and Zero here to begin with. Sure, it's an overused trope, but hey, gotta review this thing on its own merit, right? The point where I'm starting to have big issues, however, is when Zero is apparently starting to manipulate the world around Arcturus, and doesn't as much seem as just a figment of his imagination, but more like a paranormal entity that knows the future and seems to have magical powers. I swear, this is just like Les Linda's. You have a super cool, interesting concept, but instead of doing anything with it, you instead just drop it on the floor and instead have super unfunny jokes about semen that not even infants would laugh at. I'm just puzzled with how good this comic could have been and how ass it turned out to be. You got everything you need to make this comic great and instead you chose to shit all over it. The premise is amazing, the execution is horrible, and the writing is atrocious. Fucking look at all these text bubbles! They're almost taking up more space on the page than the goddamn characters, and it's all just horrible straw manning. It all depicts everyone around Hunter and Arcturus as dumb idiots who are literally too dumb to function in the real world, and I swear to God, it uses this as a goddamn story device. They're literally so dumb that Arcturus, after wanting to get out of the game, decides he's needed because people are so dumb and thus needs to die. Okay, come on, there's gotta be something that I can comment, come on. The creator seems to like Resident Evil 4, so at least he's got a good taste in games. I fucking tried. Also, you knew this was coming, so let's just get it over with. Making a comic about something as serious as suicide is a complex and hard thing to do. There are various ways one can choose to tackle certain taboo subject matters, such as rape or suicide. One of such things is one I use a lot in my personal life, which is not something I can help, it's just hardwired into my system. Joking about the things helps us distance ourselves from the serious of the matter. It allows us, the readers, to tackle the serious issue in a different way. By making fun of something, it doesn't seem as scary and it helps us cope with what's going on better.
The problem is, however, that as I stated before, this comic doesn't do that. It doesn't joke about suicide as much as it just tells dumb, shitty jokes, and the main story just centers around suicide and preaching.
The problem with this approach is that it'll appeal to certain people while it'll hurt and offend others if it's not done right. If it's done right, it'll make the people who have been down that road in life before, or are there now, look at suicide as a horribly silly thing to do and thus be dissuaded from doing it. It might help them see the people who are affected by these actions and all the wrong that concerns this issue and reflect on it, and thus come to the conclusion that suicide should never be the answer. If you do it wrong, like this comic does, however, it'll do nothing but give people bad flashbacks to shit that happened without working it out. The difference is the closure. Say that you've had some painful experiences in your life. Ever so often you'll find things in the world around you that remind you of those painful experiences, and that shit'll eat away at you. What a psychiatrist does sometimes is that they go in there and let you know that those things can no longer hurt you. You end up realizing that the past is the past and thus the idea is no longer scary to you, and over time those bad experiences no longer faces you.
So if you absolutely have to have stuff like rape or suicide or whatever in your comic, don't do what this shit heap does. Address it. Don't just drag it in there and leave it stinking on the floor. In other words, don't be a fucking idiot.
Leslie, do you know what this comic is? Do you know what genre this is? I know I touched on it before, but do you know? It might be a slice of life comic or listed as a drama or comedy, but fuck if I care to look it up. No, this comic is a workplace comic. Workplace comics are usually identified by observations a person doing a job has about their job, usually poking fun of the dumb customers or colleagues, usually with one person acting as a psychopath while the other is a straight man. So yeah, this comic is a workplace comic. And the work just so happens to be real life. It's literally all about how everyone in the world is so stupid besides Arcturus and Hunter, who are so cool and normal and poking fun at all the dumb people who are not on their level.
This is the kind of stuff that I can only scoff at. You all know those 18-year-olds who think they got the world all figured out and knows all the world's problems and everything within it. Well, here's some hard truth for you guys. You don't. You're a teenager. You're a fucking teenager. Half of the thinking you're currently doing is through your fucking genitals. You know nothing.
Okay, personal opinion to the max here, and I'm sorry if I'm stepping over any toes. If this is you, you look like a goddamn idiot. A trench coat is fine, or at the very least it's okay, but if you add fingerless gloves and combat boots? Really? Are you going to say Morpheus, or what the fuck is going on here? It's too much. Like, I'm all for having your own style, but you look like a retard. They don't look like normal people, they look like they belong in a corn music video or something. Wasn't the whole idea to depict these guys as normal people who do what the writer thinks should be done? Then what the fuck's the point with making them look like anything but that?
I mean, there's already an issue with that with the people being furries, but I'll admit it's something you can easily overlook.
The art of this comic isn't great. It's lazy with a few snippets of good bits in there, but it's so rare that even the creator is feeling it necessary to point out when it looks good. There's hardly ever any backgrounds, nor are there any features that stands out. At no point would I be able to pick this comic out from a lineup. It's not bad, nor is it good. It's there, and that's the best I can actually say about it.
Picture it as a little golden star with "You Tried" written in it.
The amount of details of this comic does weird jumps in what I think is the creator's idea of importance. Like, Arcturus has all these weird markings, which I can only assume is supposed to be the tattoos, because the comic wants to be so edgy that the people in the comic could use it to slash their own wrists. And at the same time, the comic just neglects other details. Like my personal favorite, the band t-shirts that are referencing real band names, but they're not even using their original fonts or have any sort of print on them other than the text like a design or something. It's just the name scribbled on it. It's like if I was cutting over to me doing a joke and it was just a text joke on screen. I mean, okay, I get that drawing the same design over and over would get boring or tedious, but you can just make it into its own preset brush with Photoshop, or you could, with a little magic and alchemy, close their fucking jackets.
The quality of this comic's art is just so inconsistent. It just boggles my mind. It's like Assassin's Creed games.
I also just figured I'd talk about this in the art department, cause it's very much how the deaths in this comic are presented. These are not assisted suicides. These are murder. These are straight up depiction of these two murdering people. Kicking people off the roof, guiding their hand to stabbing themselves, or the very first page of the fucking comic where Hunter just straight up blows a dude away. I mean, the whole conundrum, the whole ethical issue with this entire comic that Arcturus is worrying about, that the drama resolves around, is whether or not helping idiots kill themselves is right or not. The problem is, though, that this is not helping them committing suicide. It's murder.
It's the main thing about the. This is like having a movie where Superman is just killing people by the bucket load. No, we're not talking about that movie.
All the movements in this comic feel stiff. At first, I honestly thought this was done with a very advanced form of paint, cause all lines seem so straight. Well, you know, the lines you can see from all these fucking text bubbles, are you fucking... But yeah, considering how much movement there is in this comic, it's impressive just how bad it looks. It feels stiff and stale. So much so that Medina several times has to actually explain what's going on. Again with these annoying... things.
Should I improve my art or do this frame differently? Nah, I'll just write what's going on. That's not lazy at all.
Plus, the body proportions just switches and changes. Like, what the fuck is up with this arm? How thin is he? Or, on the same page, how huge is Arcturus' head compared to his hand? Like, oh, okay, I get that the proportions doesn't necessarily have to fit with a humans as they are furries, but at least try and be freaking consistent. It's the same with the backgrounds. Why are there sometimes backgrounds and sometimes it's just a gradient color or nothing at all whatsoever? I mean, we can see that Medina can really make great backgrounds, or heck, even use shots that have been altered to fit with the art style.
Maybe he was too busy making that censoring effect to cover up Hunter's junk that gets used all the fucking time. Beats me.
To complement this comic is a lot like saying the Nazis sure knew how to wear those uniforms. It might be true, but it's not exactly something you'd mention with a good taste in your mouth, now is it? Nevertheless, fair is fair, and I gotta give this comic props for going all around the animal kingdom when picking animals for the different furries. It's not just your typical wolf, cat, cow, fox thing, I'm looking really hard at you, Furtier High, but instead it has everything from koala bears to giraffes. And unlike, say, Concession, it actually does screw a little around with how the various characters' bone and face structures are. This is the kind of stuff I want to see more of when making furries. Don't just give a person a stripy look and say it's a zebra. That's just lazy.
I was able to give Les Lindas a compliment earlier than this comic. God damn.
You also gotta give props to Medina for actually trying and use different angles, especially where it's not necessarily needed. There's something about that shows care and interest, and it helps keep the viewer experience fresh. It's just a shame that it's rarely looking any good, but hey, A for effort. Also, I found it, folks.
Seriously, what's with this honestly really cool guy showing up in shitty comics? What's this? Riser can shit all over a comic but have nothing against the people who made it? How about that shit? Really, the art is worlds, leaps and bounds ahead of the writing. If there was ever a reason to look this comic up, it should be for the art, and even then, I would suggest not going through the trouble. The last strips gets somewhat great, but it takes a long while to get there, and until then it's just okay. It's passable. It's nothing to write home about, whether it being to compliment it or complain about it. It's just there. Oh, right, there's one last thing. I don't know whether or not it was a conscious decision to make the comic black and white to make it less colorful and thus portray the world as dark and sad. If it was, then kudos for understanding how your theme should be when dealing with stuff like suicide. But at the same time, the humor just stands out even more as a goddamn tumor that shouldn't be there. And if it wasn't a conscious decision and it was just to save time, then why not? I mean, the colored pages, heck, even the very first comic page, is really well colored. Sure, it's not Dreamkeepers, but still, it's really good coloring. I mean, he even managed to color within the lines. Okay, that's just too fucking mean. I'm so sorry. Okay, first and foremost, do you see this? Cause fuck poor literacy. With that out of the way, let's talk about Arcturus and immediately just say out loud and unified to that name, cause holy crap does it suck. Seriously, several times I had to scroll back up to reconfirm what the fuck his name was. Then I figured, okay, maybe it's just an English name I'm not familiar with. But nope. Turns out it's the name of the brightest star in the northern celestial hemisphere. And his last name is Winrock, cause I guess we just couldn't have a last name that didn't sound like some kind of metal album. I guess he just wants so bad to be a JoJo character. And who can blame him? Arcturus is a straight man of him and Hunter. Or, that is, as straight as you can be when you are clearly so mentally unstable that you are hallucinating an evil version of yourself, communicating with it, and that you think that getting back to killing people after a small pause deserves an emotional, eye-opening scene. So, maybe we should call him the straighter man, not straight man. Anyway, I kind of think that Arcturus is supposed to be the character that the reader could or should identify with, cause he actually raises some reluctance and actual thought once he and Hunter starts killing people. I kind of think I need a little more than the hint of someone's reluctance to kill another human being to want to relate to someone. I don't know, is that just me? Anyone? It's hard to describe Arcturus to any certain extent because beyond the straighter man character trope he fulfills, he isn't exactly much else. He's just a dude who's often butthurt about killing people, but then after a page or two is immediately on top of it again. He's weak-minded because he's easily persuaded to murder people by the prospect of money. And I love how some people are actually calling him strong-willed just cause he fights against Zero and wins when it comes to feeling stuff about killing people. Need I remind you that he still does it at the end? There's not a shadow of doubt in my mind that Arcturus is a clear self-insertion of Rafael Medina. The comic clearly follows Arcturus, and whether he states an opinion as fact, Rafael is right there in the black borders agreeing with his own character. Okay. Anyway, that and the fact that there's just straight up a chapter where Arcturus has to work in retail and thus the comic gains a whole new group of people to strawman and shit on. I'll bet you anything this is just more bile that Raphael had from working retail after school, just like Arcturus. Oh, and there's the fact that Arcturus is the only one who gets progressive upgrades to his outfit throughout the comic. I can't believe I just said out loud that a character in a comic that deals with suicide gets periodic upgrades throughout the comic. This is my life now. Hunter is the gun-toting psychopath of the group who is a walking advertisement for gun control.
Fuck you, don't take my gun!
Somehow, through the power of fucking alchemy I suppose, we are supposed to like this asshole, and I don't know about you, but it's gonna take a long time and a frozen hell for me to like this guy. You know that typical jock in teen movies? You know, the guy who at his first appearance makes fun of the protagonist? It's so obvious that the movie wants you to hate this guy from the get-go, and thus they force his dumb stuff in there. Well, the same but in reverse can be said about Hunter. The comic wants you so bad to like Hunter. Everything he says is supposed to be charming and goofy and wacky. He's supposed to make you laugh, but the problem is that he's not charming. He's not funny. He's annoying and kinda scarily distanced from all the murdering and torturing he's doing. But you're supposed to like him though. Like the guy who's killing teenagers by the bucket load. Love him and his murdering ways. Love him, damn it! Hunter is half preacher, half lunatic. Most of all the preachers this comic jams down your throat comes from this guy. And I won't touch on the stuff he says cause I don't want to touch politics and religion with a 10-foot pole on this show. But let me just say that, really? Really, Raphael? You're having the guy who loves killing fucking kids in horribly graphic and elaborate ways preaching to both the people in the comic but also us the readers how we can make the world better? Sure, while I'm at it, let me talk to Charlie Sheen about my coke addiction.
I'm by winning.
The very moment Arcturus approaches Hunter about his plan for murdering dumb teenagers, he's aboard faster than you can say mentally unstable. He's also the one taking the whole thing to a constant new level, which, I'll admit, had me kind of interested. For a split second there, it could have been a battle between Arcturus and Hunter at some point near the end of the comic, where Arcturus had realized what they did was wrong, while Hunter was insisting that what they were doing was right. It got even closer to that when Hunter overstepped so many of Arcturus' rules that Arcturus quits the job. I'll be honest, when reading this, I was honestly sitting up in bed, reading with a very piqued interest. But then it turns out this was just so Arcturus and Medina could shit all over retail customers and have an, I guess, emotional scene where he decides to join Hunter in killing kids again. Normally I'm all for having my expectations thrown for a loop, but I also like it when the expectations after that loop aren't neck deep in cow shit. Hunter is horrible in every thinkable way, and that's exactly why he could have been great if this comic wasn't what it was. Had the comic been this story of two friends with different ideals and goals, growing apart due to their differences, and actually taking a serious and critical stand when it comes to suicide, then Hunter could have been a great character, in that he'd be a flawed, easily hated character that some people would still love. But because this comic decides to throw all the potential away to make it all about dick jokes instead, Hunter just serves to be downright horrible and offensive every time he opens his mouth to preach. Someone should give this guy a muscle. See, this is why I love making these furry comic reviews. This shit just writes itself. The writing is free. The only thing that pulls it up that high is because the premise is so good. You could have done so much with this, but instead it all became other complete garbage. The writing is phenomenally bad. It's amazing how there can be written so much and it still fails to tell us fucking anything. The art is a 4. It's not exactly bad, it's just very flawed. It's clear to see that Medina improves as he makes the comic, but it's not a lot. There are some things in this comic that shows that Medina has put some honest to God work into it, and that is commendable. But it's patch jobs to an otherwise flawed art and downright horrible presentation. The characters are free. Arcturus and Hunter are the only characters with any personality. Or well, I say personality, but the truth is that what they have is more or less a template that they fill out to the letter. One's the straighter man and one's the comic relief. Besides a few quirks and traits here and there, this is all you'll find with these characters. The rest are horrible strawman depictions and holier than thou presentations. All in all, this comic is a free. Don't read this comic, especially not if you have ever had any suicidal tendencies or been down that road in your life before. This comic is offensive and childish. It tries to be provocative and edgy, but all it meant to do is come across as pretentious and self-righteous. Stay away from this comic, it's not good for you. God damn. You know, between just you and me, this kind of reminds me of when I was going through. God damn, more mails? Fuck, just leave me alone for fuck's sake! The hell do you want? Just leave me the fuck alone! I have luckily never claimed to be a good actor. Before we get into this whole thing where I talk about all these amazing patrons who have been so ever so gracious to, you know, pitch into this review, I gotta get something out there first. As I wrote in the beginning of this video, if you at any point during your life or right now feel that you're going through a hard time and you're kind of thinking of maybe taking your own life, I beg of you, like I personally beg of you, please talk with someone. You should never kill yourself. Never fucking ever. No matter what the circumstances are, please always look for the alternative. If you need to talk with someone, you can write me a private message here on YouTube, or you can send me a mail at riser@mail.com. Whatever it is, just get it off your chest and talk with someone. There's always help to get. With that said, let's talk about these amazing patrons who have helped making this episode possible. First of all, we got Luraiokun. Luraiokun is working on Yav, which we should all know by now is a romantic furry comic that is as great told as it's drawn. It deals with gay romance and all sorts of stuff like that, so you should really go check it out. I personally really enjoy it. Next up we got CloudyDaze. CloudyDaze is working on Overcast. If you have been keeping track, Overcast is a animation series of shorts with pixel art that is going to be really well told. You can already now go to his Deviant Art and check out some some small little sneak peeks about what's going to happen. Shane Asher is working on Strays of Terraria. I personally really love this comic because whenever I'm feeling down or whatever, I can just look at this and I immediately feel better, and I won't have to hire some gun-toting lunatic to kill me, because I already just, I get this feeling of, yay, life is good, because it's so colorful, there's so much energy, and it's just an all-around feel-good comic to read, and it's also really interesting. Angel Povedano Ruiz has kind of switched his attention from Distant Flames, which we've been talking a lot about here on the show, and instead is working on, and let's see if I can pronounce this, Cretaceous Survivor, which is basically about how a dinosaur manages to survive the extinction of all dinosaurs, and how it survives in that world. So really, go check it out. It sounds really interesting, and I'm going to read it the moment I'm done with this. Nana Newcomb. Nana Newcomb works on Blackbird, a very serious and adult superhero comic that deals with very adult themes, as well as taking an interesting spin on the whole superhero thing. Go check it out if you are into, that kind of grim, dark underbelly of comics that deals with very serious subject matters. Alyster Vain, once again, doesn't want me to push anything, so instead let me just fill you in on a little thing that Alyster Vain is a super cool guy, and once he decides that he wants me to push something, by all means, go check it out. It's amazing how humble this dude is. Alix J. Alix J has the comic Death's My Bitch, which has been going strong for quite a while now, and has been getting a lot of retouches here and there. She constantly goes back and sees what works, what doesn't work, and she alters it to fit with the story that she's telling. So go check it out. There's few comics out there that I've seen has so much work just poured into it. Zachary Seligson. Zachary is working on a comic called Marquis, I think it is. It's a sci-fi furry comic, and the thing that really jumped to my attention when looking at this comic was that it's clearly drawn inspiration from stuff such as Last of Us and Mass Effect. So with inspiration like that, like how can you possibly fit like that's a match made in heaven. Scott Fraser. Scott Fraser works on Star Warriors, a very interesting and very well told comic about how a fox dies and becomes a protector of wishes and kind of the balance of the whole galaxy. It's kind of hard for me to put into words, so instead you should go check it out, and really, I really enjoy this comic really much. Nocturne. Nocturne keeps surprising me and leaving me flabbergasted with every video this dude puts out. If you are into that kind of found footage, that weird meta-criticism, that weird unnerving video that you might find online when you're browsing YouTube, and you kind of want context for it, Nocturne is your guy with Nightmind. Nightmind is all about these videos, analyzing them, and the way that this dude can present this stuff and talk about it is nothing short of 10 out of 10. Go check it out, especially here when it's Halloween. Jake Springhorn. Jake Springhorn works on a comic that I have actually covered on this show with my stripping episodes called The Drifter. The Drifter is a very mature and very serious furry webcomic. And there was one thing that really stood out when I was reading through this comic, and that was that everything was this yellow color. And after talking a little bit with Jake Springhorn, it actually turns out that this was a purpose thing to make it seem like everything was hot. So for someone who goes into that much detail to put in, color themes and all that, that this person has been thinking about this comic through and through. So go check it out. And lastly, we got VaatiWithBlue, and let's see if I can say this without butchering it. Jokon Ukechukwu Udego, Nights of Dreams, Kawaii, Shiv, Ghostlight Studios, Lizzie Shiro, Gage, and David Lilly. If you want to support the show, you can do so on the Patreon. Just go to www.patreon.com/Riser. You can pledge any amount you want, and by all means, you don't have to. The show will continue nevertheless. And I'm also going to, quickly mention this because there's been some confusion about this. You won't be paying every month. I don't think that's fair. Every time you will be paying is every time I put up a video. So I'll be withdrawing the money with every video I upload. So you won't, be paying for something you're not getting. I don't think that's fair. If you don't feel like pledging on the Patreon, then at least think about subscribing, liking this comic, and share it with your friends. And if you're not going to do that, well, at least thank you for watching it till the end. I'll see you guys at the next webcomic relief. Take care.